Hi everybody, this is Gijs again with another review and I hope you are doing well. This time it is a outdoor watch, the giant Casio G-Shock Mudmaster GWG 1000 1A3ER. Well, what's in the name? Let's just call it the Mudmaster. Enjoy the video! Welcome to the review of the Casio G-Shock Mudmaster, and I will only refer to it as Mudmaster in the rest of the video. If this is the first time that you tune into my channel, I would like to tell you that I am a 100% independent reviewer. I'm not being paid by manufacturers to make my reviews. I don't have any affiliate deals and I don't have advertisements on my website. And after reviewing, all the products are being sent back to the manufacturers. If you value my way of independent reviewing, please support me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, follow me on Instagram and like my Facebook page. And if you do, many thanks in advance. And now let's start with the review on the Mudmaster. The Mudmaster is quite an impressive watch. If you just look at the size, it is from this side to that side, it is 60 millimeters. From there top to bottom here it is 56 millimeters and it is a 17 millimeters thick. The weight is also quite heavy. It is 117.5 grams, and since I'm a small guy with a small wrist, I really notice the weight. What I do like is that it might be a very big watch, but if you tie the wristband to its smallest size, then you have a circumference of 14 centimeters. So a small wrist can wear this watch as well. If you maximize the circumference, you have a wrist diameter of 21.3 centimeters. So that is a really big arm. Now I still have to mention that silly code word again. The GWG 1001A3ER. That is this watch, and as you can see, you'll have to look through the mud. Let's turn it the right way up. It's got a olive drab wristband, and you can see that the hands are white. Now there's also a version without the 3, and that one has got a black wristband and has got dials that are khaki green brownish. This is just a design difference. But there's one other thing, and I don't know if you can see this, but there is a tiny LCD screen on the watch. And this shows a lot of stuff, and I will get into this later. But this LCD screen in this version with the 3, it is a black LCD screen and it has almost black numbers in it. If you have the version without the 3, then the numbers on the small LCD screen are more whitish, and that is going to be very important for the rest of this story. But as you can see, this one is quite muddy and it would be decent first to clean it. So the watch is clean, and putting it under a running tap is not a problem because the Mudmaster is of course 100% waterproof, but more on that later. The Mudmaster is a very complicated watch and it's got a lot of function, and only look at the watch face and you will see all the sub-dial and all the small figures and numbers. So it needs a good manual. Well, I always like the manuals that Casio does. They're always small, this size, and they're always very thick. And in this case, this is a manual for English, German, French, Italian and Spanish. And regrettably, it's not available in Dutch, probably because we are a very small language area. The manual itself, well, you don't need to bring it, of course, if you know everything by heart, but I always bring the manual on every trip that I go, just as a reference, because sometimes you forget stuff. But what I do is I don't bring the whole manual. The whole manual weighs 123.1 grams, but I just take the English part with me because this only weighs 24.1 grams and it is small enough to fit in any small backpack. The manual itself, it is quite nice written. Of course, it's not literature, but it's very functional, and all the pages, they explain every function of the watch very, very well. And they've got these nice, well, basically walk-through menus, so you go from step A to B to C, and it is a very functional manual in that respect. So if you buy this watch, bring it on your trip just as a reference. The most important thing of any watch is, of course, timekeeping, and the Mudmaster does this very, very well. It is very accurate. How is this possible? Well, every now and then, and I believe it's every 5 hours, it is receiving a radio signal from one of the atomic clocks in the world. And this signal calibrates the hands. So every 5 hours, the hands are calibrated to the correct time at that moment. And I believe these stations are based in Japan, the US, UK, and of course there's one in China. If you are outside these areas or more remote spots, then you might have to calibrate the timekeeping just by hand, and that's possible of course too. Since the Mudmaster is a very big watch and used for outdoor circumstances, the buttons should be big as well, and that has been taken care of. The Mudmaster has got 5 buttons that are really, really well proportioned. It's one over here, there, and then there is one on the middle down here. Most buttons have got a very dedicated function, and what I do like about the buttons is not only that they are big, but that there is also a sort of a little structure on top of the button, so that when you have cold hands or wet hands, that you can still feel it very well. And the buttons are very usable when wearing gloves, even thick winter gloves, so that is a pro. Now let's take a look at all the buttons. The top right is a dedicated button for the compass. The bottom right is a dedicated button for the altimeter. And you should be aware that this one only works if the small hand in the subdial is in the north position, when it's pointing upwards. On the top left, by pressing this one, you change the small LCD screen, what is visible in the small LCD screen when you are in timekeeping mode. So this changes between the first time, second time, the date, that kind of stuff. Then the lower right button is to change the dial itself, the small hand on the subdial. So now it is on the top position. When I press it once, it is in the barometer position. So now I get the barometer reading in the subscreen. Then it changed to temperature. Now I see the temperature, and then there are I think 8 more time modes. Now I'm in the original position again when the hand is pointing north. Now there's one big button below here, and that's the button for the light. Now we'll have to kill the light to make it visible, but this works nicely. Then on the right side in the middle, there is the crown, and the crown gives access to some other features. And if I unscrew the cap, then you can see the red seal already appearing. Now when I pull the crown outside, like so, now you will see that there is the mark City below in the LCD screen. And you'll see it slightly, and well, I'll show you this. Where is it? I have got a very big light on the watch face at the moment, because otherwise I cannot show you this. It's pretty hard to read. But the city, now I can adjust with the crown the second hand towards a different city. For example, we travel from Kabul to Paris. From Paris to Kabul now. And now I have the Kabul time. Now let's go back again. That's the other way around. And let's pretend that we are in Paris again, because that's basically Amsterdam time. Now, that's one function. What I also can do is adjust the time itself and the date. And that's just by pressing this one. Now I can adjust the time manually. So if you don't want to be influenced only by the radio controlled stuff, this is the way how to do it. Well, that's for the moment enough. And don't forget to screw the crown back in its place, because otherwise you will end up with a watch that is not waterproof anymore. One other quite unique feature to Casio watches is the fact that it is solar panel operated. The watch face, the black part, it is one big little solar panel. And I've been testing this one for about 4 months and it never let me down. And I've been wearing it just every day, outside, indoors. It's been on my night table next to my bed at night, of course. And in the periods where there's not so much light, like the winter time, it charges even when it's, well, sort of darkish, overcast. So the solar panel really works well with the watch. And I own several other Casio watches that have a solar operated battery system, and they never let me down in the past as well. So this is a really very sustainable system. A outdoor watch should be rugged. Well, the Mudmaster is very, very rugged. The outer casing, it's made out of a very robust plastic, and the glass, it is made out of sapphire glass. And sapphire glass, it is very resistant to scratches and that kind of stuff. And I've been bashing into trees, rocks, putting it down the wrong way up on the table, for example. And it's, like you've seen, been very, very muddy. And even if you wipe it with your hands or with your gloves, the sapphire glass, it's got no scratches whatsoever. And what also is nice is that, and I hope you can see this, is that the sapphire glass, the bezel around the glass itself, it's, well, about 2 or 3 millimeters higher than the glass itself, so it is also very well protected. One thing that I cannot show you, of course, is how the watch looks on the inside, but it is important as well. And try to put a picture up here, a factory picture of Casio, and that shows that every connection that is made from the outer world to the inside of the watch, it's got double O-ring seals. To prevent dust and mud and of course water getting into the casing. So in that way it is also a very rugged build. Now I have to explain something about the name Mudmaster. In the Netherlands, Mudmaster is also a competition, a obstacle run. You know, when people run through the countryside over fences, puddles, rivers, that kind of stuff. And in that respect you get muddy, and the name Mudmasters is very well chosen. But if you relate it to timekeeping, then I must say that yes, the Mudmaster has got a stopwatch and you can do lap times as well, but it is not a real sports watch because, for example, it doesn't have a heart rate monitor. So be aware of this. So to my opinion, it's not a real sports watch, but it is a real outdoor watch. And one of the key features of the Mudmaster is the triple sensor, and triple sensor is something that Casio uses already for a long time, and it is hidden behind the red ring here. The triple sensor is a sensor that measures the temperature, it measures the barometric pressure, and therefore also it is a altimeter. And there's of course a compass on the Mudmaster. Now let's start with the temperature. The Mudmaster measures the temperature between -10 degrees Celsius and +60 degrees Celsius. And since this is an international watch, you can also adjust it into Fahrenheit, and I will put it up here. The temperature range of -10 degrees is of course not that low, but when it's on your wrist and it still measures -10 degrees, then you are in really bad shape. So in that respect, it's not that important. What I did notice is that because of the sensor being on one side of the watch, it is important to know where you wear the watch to get an accurate temperature measurement. And I will try to demonstrate this. When I put it on my right wrist, like so, the temperature sensor is on the outside of my hand basically. So there is not a sleeve or material covering the sensor. If I wear it on my left arm, then the sensor points inwards. So when I have a sleeve from a jacket, it is most of the time covered by this. And I noticed that the temperature difference between right and left is about 4 degrees. And when you wear it on the left side, of course, it's 4 degrees higher because of the increase of temperature. What I also notice is that the temperature that the watch measures is more a balance between the outside temperature and the temperature of your body. When it was 5 degrees outside, I measured the watch at 17, 16 degrees, and then depending on left or right, of course. So in that respect, it's not very accurate on giving the outside temperature. If you want to know this, then take the watch off your wrist, put it somewhere beside you, and let it stay there for about half an hour, and then you will get an accurate temperature measurement. Now let's continue with the compass, because the Mudmaster has got, of course, a compass. You operate it by pressing the top right button. And what you will see is that the second hand starts moving, and the second hand points north. The bearing, you can read the bearing in the small LCD screen. Now, the compass, of course, it is a digital one, and it can be calibrated, and even the magnetic declination can be set by hand. The compass, when I've been working with the watch outside, it pointed always in the correct direction. Sometimes it is a little bit slow if you change direction, but there is one big difference between the digital one on my watch or an analog one, and I'll try to demonstrate this with the analog one and a map. Because the analog compass, you should know how this one operates, of course, but you can put it in front of your hand and you can really make a very nice bearing. Well, it's possible with the watch as well, but it's just a little bit more of a hassle. Also, if you want to use the watch in combination with a map, the best thing is that you take the watch off your wrist the whole time, and then you can use it in combination with a map. So I think that the compass on the outdoor watch, it is a very nice feature, but just in case. And if you go on an adventure, I would strongly advise you bring a map and bring an analog compass as well, and use the watch as a backup. The next dedicated button on the Mudmasters is the button for the altimeter, and it is on the lower right side. And by pressing it, I can read the altitude in the small LCD screen, and I will have to take a quick peek. Oh, nice. Now you can see that the big hand is in front of the LCD screen. Now, if I press the light button, which is the lower one here, and the lower right button simultaneously, you can see that the the hands get out of the way. Now I can read the altitude, which is minus 12 meters here. That's not very accurate at the moment, but I will explain why this is. What you should know is that the altimeter calculates the altitude because it has a pressure sensor inside the watch, a barometric pressure sensor. Now, the barometric pressure sensor measures the pressure on Earth at our current location. Now we have, and this is going to be a quite difficult story to explain, so listen carefully because it is important. It's important to understand how a watch and how a altimeter works. We've agreed on Earth that at sea level, which is 0 meters, the pressure is 1013 millibars. And when we climb a mountain, the lower the pressure gets. And with every 8 meters that we climb, the pressure drops 1 millibar. Now, because we know this, you can always calculate the height because of this. On every location on Earth, this works. But there is one little catch. And maybe it's not a little catch, it is a rather big catch. Because the pressure sensor only measures differences in pressure. And when we climb a mountain, yes, it is a fact that the higher we go, pressure drops. We know this, it's a fact. But what we don't know, and what the watch doesn't know, is that the pressure might also drop or rise because of the changing of weather. For example, if we climb a mountain and a low pressure area is getting into the area that we are climbing, well, then you've got a increase in height, so a drop in pressure, but because of the lower pressure area, this is almost doubles. So while we climb for, let's say, 100 meters, that can be shown on the watch for 200 meters. And this is just an example. It depends on how much the pressure drops because of the weather. Another example, we climb the mountain, so the pressure drops, so the altitude should rise, but there is a high pressure area approaching to where we are climbing. Then it might happen that we climb, that's a fact, a high pressure area is getting into where we are climbing, and then we are, according to the watch, because it's just a calculation, we stay on the same altitude. What is very important, if you use a watch with a pressure sensor that calculates the altitude from the pressure, that you calibrate it as much as you can. And you can do this, for example, on crossings that are shown on the map with an altitude on the map. You can do this at the mountain hut where you are staying, because this is, most of the time, they have a fixed altitude, which is written on the map or on the mountain cabin itself. Or if you reach a top, a summit with a cross, there is always a sign that says how high you are at that point. So calibrating is important, because then you minimize the chance of getting a misreading because of weather. And also you can not only calibrate the altitude, but you can also calibrate the barometric pressure sensor. So if you know one of those two, you can calibrate it every time you should do this. And the more often you do this, the more accurate the watch will show your altitude. And if you don't do this a lot, then well, things can go really wrong. For example, if you are in a whiteout or there's heavy fog, and you don't know how this works, you can really think that you are staying on one altitude or that you're climbing, but still totally be lost in a whitish world. So knowing and understanding the principle on how a barometric pressure relates to the altitude meter, it is very important. And now, if you didn't understand it, or I'm not clear enough, just reverse it again and listen to it again. And otherwise, send me an email and I will explain this. And it's also in the review that I wrote on my website. So if you just want to reread this, you should do that definitely. Well, that was quite a story on the altimeter and the barometer function, but I'm not done yet, because the barometer pressure sensor has got one other very important feature, and that is the weather alarm. A weather alarm alarms you when there is a sudden drop or rise in pressure. And most of the time this drop or rise is because of a change of weather. And this is important in the mountains, because when we are in the mountains, we are not always aware of what the weather is doing. We don't look around that much into the sky, and sometimes there is a big mountain in front of us and you can't see the sky. So then a weather alarm can be a very useful function. And especially when a low weather front is passing with low pressure areas, that means most of the time severe bad weather. And that means snow, maybe thunderstorms, that kind of stuff. And you should be alarmed by this. If a high weather front is approaching, it's most of the time less severe, because most of the time it is a weather change for the better. But especially the low pressure warnings, they are really, really important. Now, again, here's also a catch, that the weather alarm also can, of course, be triggered because you are climbing or descending the mountain very rapidly. That can also trigger the alarm, but at least you are warned that something is going on. And I think a weather alarm should be on every outdoor watch. And yes, the Mudmaster has one. Now let's get back to the beginning of the story, when I cleaned the watch under my tab. The Mudmaster is rated for 20 bar, and 20 bar means it can resist 204 meters of water on top of it, and then it will still be waterproof. 204 meters, that's a lot. So in that respect, it could almost be a dive watch. Well, of course it's not, because it misses the diving functions, but it is really waterproof. It is also very shockproof. I already told you what I did with it. And one of the things that makes the watch so very shockproof is the fact that on the interior there is a silicone mat. And Casio calls this alpha gel, and this alpha gel, it absorbs basically the vibrations and the shocks, so it doesn't get into the watch itself, into the more vulnerable parts. So in that way, yes, it is waterproof and shockproof. Well, that was a lot of information. Now let's head over to my verdict. How do I rate the Casio G-Shock Mudmaster GWG 1001A3ER? And this is the last time that I said this. Well, in the first place, I do like the fact that it is a very nice watch to wear and to look at. When I'm wearing it, I have the feeling that I have Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis on my wrist. And that's really a priceless feeling. And everywhere I go, everybody asks about the watch. And that's something which is, well, worth something too. I like the fact that it is a very rugged watch. In the months that I've been using it, I don't have any damage on the watch whatsoever, and also not on this sapphire glass. So it is really well built. Also the fact that it is shockproof and mudproof, the watch has proven itself in that respect. It is also a real outdoor watch because it's got a compass, a barometer and a altimeter, and it's got a temperature sensor as well. The functionality of them are a little bit less than I've hoped for, because every time you need the information you will have to look into the small LCD screen, and if you look at it in a glance because you want to do it quick and fast, it's not that practical. And also a black background and sort of black dark gray numbers on them, it's not that easy to read. So that's really a downside of the Mudmaster. And what I also think is that for smaller wrists, I'm a small guy, it is quite a heavy watch and it is quite bulky on your wrist, and especially in combination with sleeves, if you want to wear them over your watch, it is not that comfortable. Now let's head over to the price. The watch retails for 699 euros, and I think that is quite a lot of money. Although I do understand it, because if you look how the watch is constructed, how it's been built, well, the ruggedness, I think that's worth something, especially with the looks. But still, I think the price is a little bit on the high side. And therefore I rate the Casio G-Shock Mudmaster at 7.7 out of 10 points total. I hope you liked the review and that it was useful to you, and if it was, please give it a like and leave a comment below. And if you just tuned in after the verdict, then please know that I am a 100% independent reviewer. I'm not being paid by manufacturers to make my reviews. I don't have any affiliate deals and I don't have advertisements on my website. And after testing, all the products are being sent back to the manufacturer. If you want to support my way of independent reviewing, please follow me on Instagram, like my Facebook page, but above all, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the alarm bell so you know when I uploaded a new video. And if you start following me, many thanks in advance. Enjoy the outdoors. Ciao, ciao. And now a cup of tea. It's a wrap.